I'd like to call this meeting of the Council of Collingwood, Monday, November 20, 2023 to order. I'll just say we have regrets today from both Councillor Doherty and Councillor Jeffrey. For the call to order today, we'll have a reading of our land acknowledgement, which is Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. For more than 15,000 years, the First Nation walked upon and cared for the lands we now call home. Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe, and many others who were families, friends, and communities that were the way we are today. The town of Collingwood acknowledges the Lake Simcoe Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818 and the relationship it establishes with the original inhabitants of Turtle Island. We acknowledge the reality of our shared history and the current contributions of Indigenous people within our community. We seek to continue empowering expressions of pride amongst all of the diverse stakeholders in this area. We seek to do better and to continue to recognize, learn, and grow in friendship and community, nation to nation.
Next on to the adoption of the agenda. There's one additional deputation today, and I'm proposing that we add Ms. DeRuiter as the third delegation. This would be adding as 7.3, and she'll be speaking about the item at 12.1, which has to do with the naming of the park in the Summit View subdivision. The motion then would read as follows: that the content of the council agenda for November 20, 2023 be adopted as amended. Right, okay. Sorry, our clerk is mentioning I should be adding one further item to the agenda, which is under the other business, which is 17.2, that will add specifically in the item relating to the ROMA, which is the Rural Ontario Municipalities Association delegation. Okay, with those two amendments in mind, the mover, Deputy Mayor, and a seconder, Councillor Baines. All those in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest today? Deputy Mayor Fryer.
There we go. Now it's working.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I will require a severing of the, gotta get the right number. Sorry about that. I have a non-pecuniary interest code of conduct reasonable person test that's applicable for item 10.1.1 PRC 2023-04. So I'm going to request that that be severed so I can participate in the other items. I'll step away then for the PRC 2023-04 for council's consideration.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the adoption of the minutes. The motion reads that the minutes of the council meeting held November 6, 2023 and November 9, 2023 be approved as presented. And there's four. The first one is special meeting of council, November 1, 2023, regular meeting of council, November 6, 2023, special meeting of council, let's talk budget, November 8, 2023, and special meeting of council, November 9, 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Ring, seconded by Councillor Houston. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. Is there any business arising from the previous minutes? Seeing none, or on to community announcements, and we'll start with you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. Thoroughly enjoyed the amazing parade on Saturday, and I'll let others speak to that. But congratulations to everyone that was involved. It was a tremendous success. The day before, along with Mayor Hamlin and Councillors Doherty, Ring, Baines, and Perry, we attended a very informative seminar put on by the Institute of South Georgian Bay on new ways to finance the affordability housing gap. Most of our Collingwood Affordable Housing Task Force members were there. So I see many of the ideas that sprung out of that breakout session from the seminar will be at the forefront of some of the next steps to be considered as we move that key advisory committee forward. Also, at last Saturday's Remembrance Day service, it was very heartwarming to see our community's interest in attending and honoring those who had served to protect our freedoms. We all have been even heavier hearts this year because of the troubling conflicts currently happening worldwide. We all are more than concerned for the safety of the civilians caught up in the middle of it all and hope that the conflicts will come to an end very soon. And those are the two items I wanted to report on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Mayor. The Deputy Mayor already mentioned the parade on the weekend. I was unfortunately sick and wasn't able to attend, but in speaking with Sue Nicholson of the BIA, that she mentioned that in her more than 20 years of being involved in this, in the parade, this was the biggest one that she's seen by the number of entries, and just wanted to commend the business community, nonprofit organization, and youth groups that really stepped up their entries, showcasing the theme of Gingerbread Christmas. The BIA would like to extend thanks to the Works Department for sourcing and installing the Christmas tree as well. And Santa visits start this Saturday in his sleigh beside the Christmas tree from noon till 3. And he'll be bringing his reindeer in training with him this Saturday. And then he'll be here each Saturday until Christmas, and the reindeer will be back on December 9th. As well, downtown Christmas markets will be running from December 1st, 8th, and 15th from 5 to 8 along here Ontario Street, and that includes strolling entertainers, free horse and wagon rides, and visits with Santa and his sleigh. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Councillor Potts.
Thanks, Mayor Hamlin. Deputy Mayor covered the first one, and I know Councillor Ring's going to cover the second one, so I have nothing at this time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ring.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. The Deputy Mayor touched on the Remembrance Day, but I'd just like to add, I too thought that was one of the largest crowds I've ever seen at a Remembrance Day ceremony. It was quite good to see that the community did remember, maybe because it was a Saturday and the kids were in school, but it certainly was heartwarming to see the many people were there. As I said, as being on the task force, I also had enjoyed the day in Meaford on the 17th, so I won't elaborate that one because it's already been touched on. I'd like to add to the parade just a little bit of a story. I was going to say, I could put in my notes that if nobody spoke about it, but I knew they would, that it was probably the biggest parade I ever saw, either myself. And one of the things that I noticed us being in the parade, we were on the fire truck at the lead, and where we went the whole parade route. And when we were turning down, we actually caught the end of the parade that hadn't even started yet. That's how big the parade was. It was amazing. So it was really good to see. I will touch on the hockey, though, this Councillor Potts alluded. Yesterday, Councillor Potts and I were thrilled to be part of the puck dropping ceremonies and the championship award presentations at the 25th annual Collingwood Regional Silver Stick Tournament. There were 4 different age divisions with the championships buy-in to advance to the International Silver Stick Championships held in either Sarnia, Ontario or Port Huron, Michigan. 2 Collingwood teams, the U15 and the U18, both advanced to the finals. Let me get my papers again. Probably tell you off the top of my head, but unfortunately, the U15 team was unsuccessful in winning. But I'd like to touch on their game because their final game was probably set a silver stick record. In regulation time, they finished in a 1-1 tie with Woolwich. These teams remained deadlocked after a sudden victory overtime period. Then they proceeded to a shootout, which took 17 shooters from each team to finally get a winner. So it was quite a game. Kids should be proud of their accomplishments. The Collingwood U18 team, though, were successful in defeating Owen Sound 4-0 in their championship game, and they will now travel to Sarnia in January to play against other regional champions from across Canada and the United States to hopefully win the international championship. So that's all I have.
Thank you for that. Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was pleased last week to attend my first meeting of our town's museum advisory board. And in that regard, just to toot the horn of the museum, if you've seen the latest issue of Escarpment magazine, you will see and hear a wonderful article on the Great Storm of 1913, which I recommend to everyone, and particularly Collingwood's involvement by the tragic loss of so many of our citizens on the Great Lakes. 278, or that's the estimate, sailors died in that storm. They referred to as the White Hurricane. At any rate, this was written and can also be heard by Ken Mahar's excellent podcast. And I say to all citizens, if you want to learn more about the history of Collingwood and you don't like reading, you can just listen on podcasts. Just go to your app and type in Collingwood Museum, and you'll find a whole number of excellent podcasts. Recommend it to everyone. And last but not least, Girl Guide cookies, chocolate mint cookies, delicious and nutritious. For whatever reason, I have become the receptacle or the depot for the distribution of these. Not 40 minutes ago, the Girl Guides leader for troop number 12, Kim Bryan, left off 10 of these packages or boxes at my door, which I'm in turn distributing to friends and neighbors, and would broadcast to all that if you want Girl Guide cookies and there's not one in your neighborhood or a Girl Guide, just give me a call or text me or send me an email through council, and I'll make sure you get these. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We all love those. Councillor Perry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I thought you were going to say that they were to distribute to council, but I guess I was wrong. Given the snowmobile season's coming up pretty quickly, and there's been a lot of work done on the trails in the past few weekends, of which I've had the honor of being a part of, the OFSC has released a report, a financial report on the impact of snowmobiling in Ontario, and over 30,000 kilometers of prescribed snowmobile trails is the most valuable recreational trail network and a key pillar of our winter tourism economy. The new study found that the expenditures by snowmobilers riding on OFSC snowmobile trails increased to $1.4 billion, up from $834 million in 2019. In turn, these 2023 expenditures resulted in an estimated $3 billion worth of snowmobiling-related activity for Ontario. Meanwhile, snowmobiling trails directly supported 9,307 full-time jobs in 2023, while generating $538 million in taxes across 3 levels of government, $239 million in federal, $258 in provincial, and $41 million in municipal taxes. And as a reminder, I promised Mayor Hamlin I would do this, that town trails, the speed limit is 20 kilometers per hour. So please stick to that. Thank you. And one more, I have a library announcement. Join us this Wednesday at 10:15 a.m. for a special edition of Toddler Tales. Local author Elizabeth Redder will be in the children's department to read her book, The Adventures of Easton, the Rescue Pet, based on the true and hilarious stories of her real-life rescue dog, Easton. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just briefly, I'll mention this Saturday is the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. And I can tell you also that our town's raising a flag on Friday, the day before at 11:30, also in honor of this day. For those following the Collingwood Arts Centre progress, the first meeting of the Feasibility Steering Committee that Council selected members for perhaps just last week is meeting tomorrow, so that's getting underway. And lastly, I'll mention the Easter Seals is having a Classics hockey tournament next weekend in the Eddie Bush Arena. I've been asked to say a few words at dinner, a gala as they're calling it, a gala dinner, and on the Thursday night. But the tournament is going to have some former NHL greats there, including Wendell Clark, Scott Walker, Bernie Nichols, Steve Thomas, and Troy Crowder. So I encourage you to have a look at the Easter Seals Celebrity Hockey Classics website to have a look. They're raising some funds in our community, of course, through this. So those are all the announcements. There's no public meetings today. The first deputation is Susannah Robinson, who's the CEO of Epcor Ontario. And before she speaks, Clerk Almas is just going to give us a brief introduction.
Thank you, Your Worship. Back this summer, Council provided direction to staff to extend an invitation to Epcor to present to Council, as well as prior to Council making a decision to reinstate a committee that's similar to the liaison committee that was established between Epcor and the town. That was originally established for the first 2 years following Epcor's acquisition of the hydro distribution company. So during that conversation that we had with their executive team at Epcor, they talked about the potential of presenting on an annual or semi-annual basis to Council as a whole, reporting to Council as well as the public on some of their key initiatives that they're working on, and also working with Council if there's any advocacy work that Council could assist them with. So this is not only their deputation, but their first presentation to share with Council work that they have been pursuing.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Put it up. Perfect. And then how do I, will you scroll for me or can I do it from here?
Sorry.
Mystery. It's a mystery.
She's reporting.
Thank you.
Yes, Susannah, as soon as you would like the slides advanced, we can advance them for you.
Perfect. Thanks very much. And thank you for having us. We enjoyed the parade. I know we had a float there. It was great. And I'll take the cookies under advisement and see if there's a Girl Guide in my area. If not, I'll have to reach out to get a box. So thank you for having us here today. I'm here with Tim Hesselink, who I think many of you know, and Darren here in our Collingwood office. I'm also joined by Marie Rounding. Some of you may know her from her Theatre Collingwood work, but she sits on our board. And so she brings with her a long career in energy and chair the Ontario Energy Board. So we are the beneficiaries of that career. So we certainly appreciate her sage advice. It's timely. We just went through a rate case, and those rate changes are going through to customers this month. So thanks for the opportunity. I've just highlighted what I want to touch on today, which are the rate changes. And some more provincial system and electrification planning that I thought the town may be interested in terms of what's going on at the provincial level and what they're thinking about as we move through electrification and climate change. And I'll take your lead on how frequently you want these or what form that they'll take, but hopefully it's helpful. Next slide, please. Thank you. I think you've seen this slide before. This is who we are. Serving Edmonton and the surrounding areas with power, water, wastewater, and drainage. And we have actually, I think, more than 30 communities in BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan with water to over 1 million people. And we're pretty pleased to have our first water project in Ontario over at the Darlington facility. We've been building the ultra pure water facility for them, and we'll be commissioning that in the first quarter. So that's been a great relationship that we've had with OPG, Ontario Power Generation. And I think, as you know, here in Ontario, we also have 2 gas utilities over in Kincardine and in Southern Ontario, in addition to the facility here. Next page. And then just a little bit more about Epcor. This is our purpose. Communities count on us and we count on each other. It's important, and we live the purpose every day because we are in so many communities and we consider ourselves community-based. You can see some stats here. 2 million customers served. Just over about 1 million of those are water customers, and the balance are electricity and some natural gas. See how many power professionals that we have and water professionals. We think of ourselves of a little bit different, not only because we think of ourselves as very community-based, but our municipal ownership combined with our public debt issuance gives us a pretty unique perspective in terms of being in the community and what capital is needed to deploy in that community to ensure safe, reliable service. We also have a proven ability to execute in the P3 space. Our water treatment facility in Regina is a P3, and that's a pretty big one and one we're just renewing as we speak. So just turning now to the next page, which is our rate filing. So we filed for new rates. As part of that, we ask for the capital that we'll need to invest in the community over the next 5 years and how that capital requirement and investment affects rates in the community. Here are some of the things that we focused on. We are planning and have approved to spend about $14 million in the community over the next 5 years. And just some themes: reliability, speed of response. So obviously reliability is very important. We still do have unplanned outages, often due to trees that come down in the Collingwood area. So we are planning to address that, to deploy some smart devices and remotely control switches to faster locate where the fault is, so we don't have to drive the lines, and that we can restore that service at a quicker rate. So that was certainly one of the themes. The next theme, we always go out and consult with our customers as part of the rate hearing. So we did go out and speak to many in the Collingwood area. And what we heard was more timely notice. So when we do have an outage, implement more communication options for customers. So we'll be looking at texting, outage information, also two-way or text or chat functions. So if there's a line down, a customer could take a picture of it, as well as providing us information. And then to support growth. So as we all know, Collingwood has grown a lot over the last few years. So we want to continue to implement grid technology solutions to maintain safe and reliability, introduced by the complexities of solar PV and electric vehicle charging, and to upgrade our systems with the grid technologies. The other thing that we're investing in that I didn't make note of here, I thought I had, but maybe I erased that bullet point, is that we're upgrading our system as well to, this will be next year, for e-billing. So I know we talked about e-billing the last time I was here, but we are upgrading that platform early in the year. So we will have an enhanced e-billing service for our customers. Next slide. So this is just a picture of the typical residential bill and how it breaks down. The commodity, which is the largest part, about 60% of the bill, is just the cost of power coming from OPG and Darlington and the cost of generation around the province. Distribution, which is what we're responsible for, are the costs paid to us to safely operate and maintain the local grid. So you can see that's about 23%. The transmission would be Hydro One's, I call them big wires, the cost to transport power from the generators up to the community. And then the settlement are just the adjustments that go through. We estimate the cost of power, and then it gets reviewed now on an annual basis, and customers get trued up. That can go either way. It can be a credit or a debit on the bill, and then 4% on regulatory costs. So that's essentially what makes up the bill. We bill the customer, so often the customer sees all of these charges as Epcor's, and we certainly explain to the customers the various components. But that 23% is what we just went through the rate case for to get approval for rates effective right now, actually, on customers' bills, as I mentioned. So let's talk about the customer bill impacts. It's been 10 years since we've been into the Ontario Energy Board asking for a review. If some of you may have been around during the acquisition, but we acquired the utility 5 years ago. And part of that application, we actually reduced residential rates by 1% for that initial 5-year period. So if we just move to the next slide. Sorry, I'm used to having slides behind me. You can see the rate class, so the residential rates, the average bill on the previous rates was $121. Again, that's for the distribution portion of the bill only. And the new rates are at $128, so a 5% increase. Same, about 5% across the board, really. 4.8 on less than 50 kilowatt hours, 4.7 on greater. Street lights, you can see that's a big reduction. That's the effort on the replacement of those, the LED replacement. And so they're seeing that street lighting reduction as a result of that effort on the LED replacements. So again, overall, those are the increases, given that it's been 10 years. Obviously, we always balance the need for investment with being very cognizant of the effect on customers' bills and affordability. Next slide. And so here you can see our rates versus those around you. So you can see in power, these are about similar size utilities, and they're generally utilities that are considered in our cohort, if you will. So when the OEB is looking at our rates and what we're doing, they look at similar sized utilities for comparison purposes. So you can see I've put ours in green. So other than Wasaga, we are at the lower end at $30.74. And you can see Wellington North, Hydro One, that's the urban rate that you can see for Hydro One, Centre Wellington, Orangeville, and Electra. There's always some timing differences. So the asterisk is our Wasaga, which are going in for those rates. They haven't been approved, hence the asterisk. And equally with Orangeville, they're also going into their rate case, so they have not been finalized. So there could be some small adjustments depending on how that rate case goes. So very competitive compared to other utilities of the same size. I will say we actually prefer to be in the spirit of transparency. We prefer to be middle of the pack. But the Ontario Energy Board did give us some challenges on our operating. So they did ask to come in a little bit lower. As I said, ideally, just like anything, what we pay our staff, we like to be kind of what we call P50, which is middle of the pack. But this is where we landed through this case. Next slide. Maybe I'll just pause and ask if there are any questions, or if you'd like me to wait to the end. It's as you wish, Your Worship. And certainly. So just then turning from Collingwood to some of the electricity policy issues that this province is looking at. And as you can see, there are a plethora of initiatives going on. I've highlighted a few that I thought would be of interest to this council today. Obviously, grid resilience as storm activity picks up and we are vulnerable. A lot of our assets are above the ground and subject to outages when trees fall on them. So that we are cognizant of that. The green button and ultra low price plan came into effect very recently. The ultra low price plan is a plan if you're charging your vehicles at night, you can have access. It's a provincial plan to very low rates overnight. If you're thinking about this program, we certainly have educations for customers in terms of what is correct for them. The ultra low plan is low at night, but it's higher during the day. So it depends on who you are, but that was certainly implemented. And a welcome addition for those that are wanting to charge their vehicles overnight. The framework for energy innovation and the energy transition roadmap, Darren actually sits on that committee, and that's thinking about how we integrate behind what we call behind the meter generation or distributed energy. So those that are putting in solar PVs that may actually put generation back. We have a couple of industrial customers in the area that have batteries that are using them for their own purposes. But how can we think about those assets in a different way to help support the grid and to possibly avoid capital investment or in lieu of capital investment? Again, some interesting numbers that I've read. In order for us to electrify the Ontario grid, they're estimating just at the Hydro One or the transmission $400 billion in investment. I haven't actually even seen the numbers. It hasn't been calculated yet. I know the Electricity Distributors Association is undergoing a study as to what that means at the distribution level or the customer level here. And I think, as we think about these issues, obviously they're going to need significant capital investment. It can't come all on the backs of the customers. It'll have to be a combination of customers and government funding, and also thinking from an innovative way. The other stat that I found interesting is that the gas grid is actually 3 times that of the electricity grid in Ontario. So if you think of, the ultimate, if you were going to replace part of that gas grid, how many nuclear stations would we need to replace what is essentially triple? Personally, I think we're going to have to avail ourselves of all the assets we've invested in Ontario. I know down in our Elmer facility, we have a customer that's a dairy farmer that is actually producing natural gas from his dairy operations that we're now bringing into the system. EV integration, enabling infrastructure for EV charging. We obviously have some EV charging here on the Eddie Bush. But how do we think about that? Customers, ultimately, we're going to have to implement two-way flow on the grid as well. So there's just a whole lot of stuff going on, even at the policy level, in terms of what areas of this actually should the utility be involved in, and what should they just enable. Next slide. And then just in terms of what we're thinking about Epcor, in terms of grid transformation, we want to understand and prepare ourselves for the load growth associated with electrification, undertake solutions that maximize utilization of existing and future investments in the grid, and enable our customers and stakeholders to meet their energy and climate goals. So we think of potentially consumers as prosumers, so producing electricity, not just consuming it, and everything that goes along with that in the future. So those are our strategic goals. A couple of things that we've done in that area on the next slide. You'll know this fund, our Epcor Go EV funding program, where we were to deliver over $4 million in public-private investment into EV charging stations across 52 projects. This is NRCan funding, $2 million, and we've seen the charging station here at the Eddie Bush Arena, and 27 projects across the South Georgian Bay area. So we had 2 multi-residential, 27 workplace stations, 21 public stations, 2 company fleet, 69 level 2, and 29 level 3. We still need a lot more on electrification, but it's a start, and it's something that Epcor really wanted to lead the way. And so we did apply for this funding and have administered it, and it is been fully satisfied now. So something that we're pretty proud of. And then as part of, next slide, thanks. And then as part of larger Epcor, obviously we have a distribution system in Edmonton. It serves about 13% of the population in Edmonton, several 100,000 connections. So they're taking on 3 pilot projects. The first is to do with EV charging. EV chargers tend to have very high variability in demand. So, and we design those EV charges for the peak demand, which only happens at certain portions of the day. So how can we think about that asset to use for other customers? A virtual power plant would be just thinking about, customers that have a solar PV and batteries in their homes, and how could we coordinate that through an aggregator? I have seen one of these systems in New York where the community is actually selling power to their neighbor and buying power from their neighbor within this community, and it's enabled by participants sort of buying and selling power online. It's pretty interesting. And then, as I mentioned, the system's going to need a lot of upgrades to facilitate this and two-way flow of power. So the other project that we're going to pilot is how can we upgrade residential customers? This is a new technology. Sometimes each upgrade can cost a customer about $18,000, which would be prohibitive if a customer wants to think about participating either through solar panels or batteries. So this is a project that actually brings a service upgrade at a much less cost. It's interesting. All these things we think about, and typically we would, as a utility, invest our own capital in this. But again, we have to be mindful of affordability on this challenge, on this climate path, and so we are looking at applying for grants so that we can get some federal or provincial or a non-government grants in order to make the cost of these pilots as we roll them out more affordable and to minimize impacts to our customers. Affordability is super important to us. It's part of our ESG goals. It's a metric that we track and we make public, and it's publicized as part of our annual ESG. So again, very important that we bear in mind affordability as we think about all the investments that are required as we go through electrifying the grid and the climate change challenges that we're all going to collectively face together. And that's the end. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, Deputy Mayor has questions.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I want to first express appreciation to Epcor in accepting our invite to provide an update on current matters and also to give us the opportunity for some discussion today. From the outset of this term, I've expressed an interest in meeting directly with our local distributor. In my former roles, I had always attempted to ensure that there was close communication between the municipality and its electric and water service providers, and that was effectively maintained. For the 125 years since the Water and Lake Commission in 1908 was originally instituted, even though there have been many changes, I believe ratepayers have benefited from the ongoing partnerships. Thus, the further request for reconsideration of the establishment of the advisory committee. I had a couple of comments and questions, though, before more about that part. My support for the 2018 Epcor purchase had ratepayer protection as one of the specific priorities. In my opinion, I was going to actually ask if we could get that comparative slide to come back up on the screen, because I'm going to make some reference to it. But in my opinion, I'm going to highlight how that has occurred. And the comparative slide helps as it indicates that only Wasaga Beach of those shown has lower rates by between 10 and 15%. As you said, we're not sure what the OEB will settle upon. But within that slide, it shows Hydro 1. And it's shown there that they're about 30% higher. And I just wanted to confirm through Epcor, that would be their urban residential rate, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And I believe that Hydro One's medium density rate, which may be applicable if it was the outer areas that you serve, is almost double at around $60.
56. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I wanted to highlight those things. Another question in the same vein then is that it's also likely, isn't it, that Epcor's rates are very similar to and therefore beneficial to the ratepayers as they would have been if Collis maintained ownership, if Collingwood maintained ownership of Collis themselves. Would that be a correct rough statement?
I think so. I mean, as I said, we implemented the 1% rate reduction for residential customers. And the rates are reflective of the capital that's required for the growing community. So, and obviously subject to review by the Ontario Energy Board. So, yeah, I think that's fair, Councillor Fry.
So just continue, if I may, Mayor. I wanted to touch about the rates first and then pick up on the increased infrastructure investment that was necessary and has been completed by Epcor in the past 5 years under no rate change.
That's correct. In fact, we have a scorecard at the Ontario Energy Board, and if you look at actually our shareholder return during those 5-year periods, it was well below the prescribed rate, and that's because we felt that we needed to invest in the system prior actually to going back. The other thing we could do is we could have waited and then tried to get it all into rates as part of this rate hearing. But we felt that the right thing to do was to invest in the utility prior to our rate case. So you'll see our shareholder return reached pretty low levels as we made those infrastructure investments.
Yeah. And that was another concern during the decision about sale, because I felt that there'd been a lack of capital investment during the partnership period with PowerStream, and the resulting impact on the reliability measures, which was felt for a few years. Your rate application details that, as outlined by the OEB or to the OEB, that you invested $15 million over that 5-year period. And that was probably about double what had previously been invested by the former partnerships.
I think that's about right. We're at about 4 million versus 2, right? Yeah. Give or take. Yeah. Yeah.
I also was noting about your 2022 OEB scorecard and the fact that that's the reason why you've been able to turn around the expected downward trend of system reliability, and you've talked again in your presentation about what you're going to do to enhance that even more. Again, those are highlights for me of the success of the situation. You also spoke about investing another $14 million. And what I was going to ask you about, because in your rate application, your original filing, it pointed out that you intended on that $14 million would equate to about 45% of the distribution revenue you're going to earn. And it's in the original document. Yeah. I was looking at it again today. And you already touched upon the fact that your revenue requirement actually dropped some because of the rulings of the OEB. And that would push into an even higher amount, like in the order of, I would think, 50 to 55% of your distribution revenue, you're going to be investing into the system.
Yeah, I think those numbers are right. I don't know about the calculations on the percent. We might, but
yeah, subject to check. I think it's reasonable.
Yeah. The main thing for me is it highlights how the commitment of Epcor, the investment of Epcor, has been beneficial to the ratepayers, and that was important to me, as I say in the sale. I just wanted to also note about the effective relationship, because that was always another goal. And to provide that advisory committee and have that ongoing forum of communication and dialogue. Thus, I made comments to David Cawley, chair of the Ontario's Electrification and Energy Transition Panel that you spoke of, and the Ontario municipalities in attendance at the AMO. That municipal governments need to work very closely with their local distributor to try to ensure that the proper infrastructure enhancements are going to be made in a timely fashion. And I just wanted to ask, is it still expected that the panel's report will come out at the end of the year?
That's the latest that I've heard. In fact, it was originally September, but yes, it is due, and it'll be very interesting to see. I know they're going to comment on the role of municipal local distribution companies and the part that they would play in grid modernization.
Yeah, and you spoke about the importance to the local utility to try to understand exactly how that's going to happen, because it's going to cost a lot of money. We can relate to that because they keep talking about affordable housing, don't tell us how they're going to pay for it. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, as a longtime member of small municipal utility sector, to thank CEO Robinson for your service over the years as the SMU representative on the EDA. I know it's a big time commitment, and it's greatly appreciated. So those are my comments. Again, thank you, Mayor. I know it was a little long there, but it's an important topic to me, obviously, and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Would any other members of the council? Yes, Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin, and thank you, Ms. Robinson, for your presentation. It's always good for councillors to be educated in the systems in our system, if you will. Just actually two questions for you. The first is in regard to your two plants that you mentioned in Ontario for power generation for Epcor's electricity. The one in Kincardine, did you say, and one in southwestern Ontario?
That's natural gas.
Natural gas.
Yes,
okay,
sorry,
that's what I want.
wasn't
Both
clear.
of them are.
Yes,
and they generate 100% of your electricity needs in Ontario?
No, they're distribution systems. Sorry.
Oh, they're distribution. Okay.
Yeah, it's natural gas. So it's similar to what Enbridge does in the province.
Okay,
so they're sorry.
And in regard to your pilot projects, which are excellent, are you considering doing any for heat pumps at all for your customers?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Not at this time, although we have been doing a lot of reading and internal talking about heat pumps and the overall effect on kind of our system. But we don't have any specific initiatives at the moment, but certainly a hot topic of conversation.
Yes. And as one of your customers, I would welcome such. So
okay. Thank you for that.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any others? Yes, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. Just on, thank you, Susannah, for your presentation, by the way, it was great. On slide 11, you have, I'm not very familiar with charging stations or things like that. On slide 11, you have a level 2 and level 3 connectors. If you could explain the difference.
It's essentially how quickly it charges the vehicle. And Darren, you might know the numbers right off the top of your head in terms of the difference between 2 and 3.
But just you've heard of the quick chargers, the DC quick chargers, that the level 3 is going to get the charge maybe half an hour, where a level 3 might take 4 or 5 hours. Depending on the state of the batteries. Yeah, I will charge.
Okay, thank you. And this is just a comment more than anything. I had the pleasure a week and a half or so ago of touring the Pickering nuclear plant, and they kind of opened my eyes to the new coming reactors, small modular reactors. I'm sure you know, I just want to throw that out there. I'm not saying we need a nuclear reactor in Collingwood, but there are a lot of options is there as far as power, because I know with the move to electric kind of everything, we're going to need more power. So anyway, just making a comment. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Hamlin.
Yeah, I can't comment on SMRs. We see them because we're in Darlington. And so, you know, I drive in there as we all do because we have the water facility there, and it's quite interesting. But I think on generation, your point is well taken. And that's where I think we need to explore what we call behind the meter or customer generation, whether that's solar or batteries or, you know, your car giving power back to the grid when you're not using it. I mean, there's all sorts of super interesting discussions. And in my mind, that has to be part of the solution. The customer has to be part of the solution on the generation piece overall. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. I'll just say, you know, thank you for coming. And it is interesting to hear that the industry, such as yourself, is thinking about how are we going to work with electrification, because it's, in my brain, it's an overwhelming, impossible situation. So you've broken it down a bit into some bite-sized chunks, and we'll look forward to seeing it unfold.
Thank you. And I think that's where the pilots that we're doing will kind of bring it sort of, oh, okay, I can sort of get my head around this. I understand what this means, as opposed to sort of trying to grapple at it from another level. So hopefully we'll be able to update you and if we get some of those pilots off the ground and how they may affect us here in Collingwood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. The second deputation, increasing safety in community safety zones. And I see Darlene Craig and also Jeanette Beck stepping forward. Yeah, and you have 10 minutes. I think you know that.
I think we're about 9.5, I hope.
Oh.
Mayor Hamlin, Deputy Mayor Fryer, and Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I'm Darlene Craig.
I'm Jeanette Beck.
And we are here to advocate for safer streets in Collingwood.
Next slide, please.
Sadly, our school community safety zones are not being taken seriously by drivers. Our ask to seek Council's approval to amend municipal bylaw number 2010-077 to implement a reduced posted speed limit to 30 kilometers an hour in elementary school community safety zones, CSZs, and to extend the physical length beyond all the school boundaries from 150 meters to 250 meters. This is something that can be done now. While our focus today is on the effectiveness of improving safety with the replacement and relocation of a few signs, we also address other safety concerns.
Next slide, please.
Safe Streets Collingwood is here to address inconsistencies and safety in our community safety zones, with emphasis on elementary school zones. Speed limit of 40 kilometers is too high. CSZ lanes need to be extended to maximize safety. Existing school crossings are not safe. Permanent traffic calming measures need to be implemented.
Next slide, please.
Look at the benefits of walking to school from the point of view of a child. Promotes better health, increases social interaction, and peer bonding.
Next slide, please.
In 2010, bylaw number 2010-077 enacted the following: posted speed limit of 40 kilometers an hour, 150 meters in either direction beyond the limits of the land used for the purpose of a school. In June 2021, Council waived notice for town to implement a temporary traffic calming in elementary zones.
Next slide, please.
We have provided you with a highlighted copy of the bylaw.
Next slide, please.
In June 2021, Council was concerned both about the increase in traffic volumes and speeds in school zones and directed staff to find a solution. The solution: seasonal temporary bollards and rubber mat speed humps, only effective for about 5 months of the year, removed in October and reinstalled the following June. Really only in place for 3 months of the school year when children are in school.
Next slide, please.
Example of the temporary cushions and bollards.
Next slide, please.
Lowering the speed and increasing the length will further enhance safety. Getting children to and from school safely is everyone's responsibility. Young children tend to think vehicles can stop instantly. Children believe that if they can see your car, you can see them. Children under 10 do not accurately judge speed or distance. The extra time to travel at 30 kilometers an hour in a school zone is not a significant burden to the general public. Test runs on Finley Drive and 3rd Street with a lower speed in the school zone increase the travel time by only a few seconds.
Next slide, please.
What is an acceptable speed in school community safety zones? First and foremost, lower speeds significantly lower the risk of injuries and fatalities for pedestrians and cyclists. At 50 kilometers an hour, an adult involved in a collision with a vehicle has 10% chance of survival. At 40, a 60% chance of survival, and at 30, a 90% chance of survival. Obviously, the outcome for a small child would be much worse.
Next slide, please.
A similar slide was shown by Tatham during their traffic calming policy presentation regarding the force or impact of a collision at different speeds.
Next slide, please.
The stopping distances increase significantly when the speed limit is reduced.
Next slide, please.
Higher vehicle speeds require longer stopping times and distances. The stopping distance is twice as long when traveling at 40 kilometers an hour versus 30 kilometers an hour. Note that some drivers exceed the posted speed limits by at least 10 kilometers an hour. So vehicles traveling at 50 kilometers an hour in a 40 kilometer zone have 3 times the stopping distance of 30 kilometers an hour. Now factor in a distracted child and wet or icy road conditions.
Next slide, please.
Better driver compliance. Children allow the independence to walk or wheel without supervision. Enforcement is more effective as it is easier to detect speeding, reduces traffic congestion at pickup and drop-off times. There is no provincial technical criteria for the maximum length of school zones other than they are at locations where public safety is of concern.
Next slide, please.
Inducing traffic.
Next slide, please.
Many of our existing school zones are too short, with many stopping close or at the school boundaries. The current 2010 bylaw is requiring 150 meters beyond school properties. Many zones are not meeting our existing bylaw. On Cameron Street, the zones begin and end just slightly beyond the east and west school boundaries. This is not protecting our students.
Next slide, please.
2 of Mountain View's zones are clearly not 150 meters, east on 3rd, south on Spruce.
Next slide, please.
Cannot. This zone actually extends a little north past Erie Street and meets the bylaw.
Next slide, please.
St. Mary's, west on Finley is too short. The French school meets the bylaw.
Next slide, please.
Admiral, south on Day is too short.
Next slide, please.
Intersections and school crossings need to reflect current best practices.
Next slide, please.
Such as raised pedestrian crossings. Examples of poor crossings in Collingwood not meeting current best practices.
Next slide, please.
Why should traffic calming on our streets be temporary when speeding is an issue? There is no season. Modern snow removal and street sweepers can accommodate permanent calming.
Next slide, please.
Speed humps and raised crossings can be retrofitted. This tiny hump mid-block on Spruce at Mountain View was added last week. replace a strip of asphalt, key the surface, install the hump or raised crossing.
Next slide, please.
Fines are increased or doubled in school zones. Most drivers are not going to take a chance with excessive speeding in a 30-kilometer zone.
Next slide, please.
Oops. I'm shaking. How do we move forward? 30-kilometer speed limit.
Next slide, please.
Increase the length to 250 meters.
Next slide, please.
Safe school crossings.
Next slide, please.
Permanent traffic calming.
Next slide, please.
Town initiatives promoting healthy habits for youth.
Next slide, please.
Increasing active transportation has many benefits.
Next slide, please.
In 2021, staff and consultants concluded automated speed enforcement, ASE, was not a viable option, citing high cost to implement.
Next slide, please.
Fast forward to 2023.
Please see your handouts.
We now have LAS, a wing of AMO, which will be offering a turnkey flexible option for installing ASE systems with no upfront fees. ASE is an effective tool to improve community safety.
Next slide, please.
Increasing the length and reducing the speed will send a strong message to drivers and have a positive impact on improved safety and enforceability. The cost of a few speed sign replacements and the relocation is not significant. While it is natural to be concerned about costs, it is equally necessary to consider the implications of inaction. All our schools are on busy corridors. Traffic is going to get worse because of our growing population. Many residents have shared multiple examples of collision close calls with pedestrians and vehicles, with many not being reported.
Next slide, please.
This year, you made Hurontario Street from First to Hume safer by reducing the speed to 30 kilometers an hour, which we would like to also note is designated as an arterial road. Our focus has been on our 5 elementary school areas, the very ones that were a concern in 2021. Our temporary traffic calming is not effective. Now is the time to be proactive. Council, this is an easy and cost-effective proposal for you to make our school zones safer by lowering the posted speed limit to 30 kilometers an hour and extending the length to 250 meters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very efficient.
That was a lot of slides to go through.
Any questions?
Yeah, there might be. Anyone have a comment or a question? Yes, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin, and thank you, Darlene and Jeanette. Your presentation was extremely well coordinated. I would like to see this include high schools included in this as well. I was just sent a video by a teacher at CCI of a student being hit by a car. Did you see that?
Yes,
and it was an eye opener. And he said to me that it happens more often than it's being reported. So, I mean, all the schools are great, but I'd like to see high schools included in this. I have experience with the 30K limit in schools. I've done a lot of driving in Edmonton, Calgary, and in fact, it's I almost said state, province-wide in Alberta. And compliance is in Calgary and Edmonton, because school zones are deemed playground zones as well. It's from 7:30 to 9 p.m. 7 days a week, not just school days. So it's 7 days a week, and compliance, from what I could tell, driving is 100%. Like I gain on no cars, and no cars gain on me when you do the 30K. It's shocking how compliant it is. So those are my comments, but I think it's really important that we include high schools in this as well.
We agree. Yeah, we agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to bring a motion? Notice a motion?
If somebody can write it for me.
Well, why don't you spit something
Maybe I should
out?
get Councillor Potts.
No, you spit something out and we'll have 2 weeks to find, come up with some better words.
The bylaw does include high schools, not just the elementary schools. Thank you.
And with the 2 points that you mentioned.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes. Director Susannah.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just thought I'd just add to the presentation this afternoon, and that is that staff have been looking at this as well. and noticing that there is some inconsistencies in our community safety zones and our school zones. And so we've been working on a report, staff report for council, which we have slated to bring forth in December. So with if it passes department head's approval, hopefully you'll see it December 4th. And in that staff report, we do comment, bring forward a lot of the things that Safe Streets Collingwood had pointed out today. And we've included some recommendations, and they touch on many of the recommendations that you've brought forward. So that this will be coming forward for council's consideration shortly. And just to add to the staff report and the anticipation that this is something that council would be interested in having implemented, we have included money in the 2024 budget to implement some of the recommendations that we will intend to make in the staff report, and speak to some of the larger budget items such as PXOs and things like that. So we do make reference to that, and again, so council will have an opportunity to ask some further questions and consider budgetary dedications towards this shortly.
Well, it's so wonderful to hear that you've been thinking ahead on this. Really, thank you.
That's great.
I also liked Councillor Perry's suggestion or thoughts around what they're doing in Edmonton and Calgary around the street zone being playground areas 7 days a week. Yeah. So if you could give that some thought in your report, I think we'd like to all hear about that. Okay. Well, thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. So, Ms. DeRuiter, there you are. Come on up.
Well, thank you for inviting me today, Mayor Hamlin, Deputy Mayor Fryer, and members of council. Excuse me. Thanks for the plug for the Girl Guide cookies. That's another one of my loves. Not just the Girl Guide cookies, but I'm a member of Girl Guides of Canada. So thank you for inviting me to speak about the nomination I had made for the name of Denbach Family Park for the Summit View Subdivision Park. I will first mention that I'm not a member of the Denbach family, but of another family who also immigrated from the Netherlands. Mr. and Mrs. Denbach, along with their 7 boys and 2 girls, came to Collingwood in 1949, shortly after they had arrived in Canada. They came here specifically in response to an ad from Smarts Brothers offering employment on their farms. So I guess that's an early example of economic development. At various times, most of the family have worked for the Smarts farms. Eventually, though, Mr. and Mrs. Denbach purchased the property on Poplar Side Road to start their own farm. The property was also where they built their houses and their family. They were, the 2 girls grew up. Audrey and married Ben Reitzma, and Margaret married Hans Vera. The property they bought and farmed for many years today includes the Summit View subdivision and park. I can't say that I know every member of the Denbach, Reitzma, and Vera families, as the family has grown from the original 11 who emigrated to about 175 people who still live in Collingwood, Stayner, Clearview, and Wasaga, many of them. My parents-in-law, George and Mary DeRuiter, who arrived in Collingwood in the early 1950s without any family support of their own, were welcomed to the community by the Denbach family, and hence lifelong friendships were forged at that time that are still existing. And that was why when I heard that the council was looking for suggestions for the Summit View Park, I knew I had to submit Denbach Family Park. In my opinion, it's very appropriate that the immigrant family who took a brave step in coming to Collingwood in 1949 be recognized in this way. Interestingly, 2024 will be the 75th anniversary of their coming to Canada and to Collingwood specifically. So if you support the naming of the park and there's a ceremony or something, I presume, Dean, next year, then that would be super appropriate for this. So thank you for considering the name Denbach Family Park. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that additional information to council. And it's most interesting to hear it will be their 75th anniversary.
Yeah, isn't
this
that
coming
interesting?
year.
Yeah, I was in preparing what I wanted to say today. I was in contact with Bill Denbach. That I'm not sure whether calling him the senior member of the Denbach family is correct, but one of the members of the Denbach family, and it was he who pointed that out. He also pointed out that his son is married into the Smarts family. So the great granddaughter, I think it was, of the Smarts brothers is now a member of the Denbach family. So that's kind of an interesting side too. Dana. Yeah.
Dana.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Were there any questions? No. Okay, thank you. And in motion 12.1, before us is the naming of this park. And I thought maybe it's a good time now to bring this forward on the agenda. Clerk Gomes, did you want to add anything to what's been said?
Thank you, Your Worship. The only thing I'd really like to say is a big thank you to Kathy DeGrooter. Kathy DeGrooter has been a valued member before retirement of the town of Collingwood in her building department. She's a historian extraordinaire. She knows this town inside and out. And for her to put this name forward was very appreciated. So recognize her in doing that for us.
Okay, thank you. So the motion before us is that the park located within the Summit View subdivision be named Denbach Family Park. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Potts, Councillor Perry. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 10.1, and the first item is to sever out the first item of which is PRC 2023-04. So perhaps I'll just look for a motion for that. Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Potts. All those in favor? Thank you. And perhaps we'll deal with that first. Thank you. So the motion before us is that council receive the committee of the whole report from its meeting held November 6, 2023, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within the report as presented. The first one is T 2023-22, 2024 operational and capital budget. That was draft number 2. So that's the only matter. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Baines, Councillor Houston, any comments? Sorry. Oh, okay. Scratch that. All right. Thank you, Clerk Gomes. All right. So, so what we're dealing with is instead, the motion will be that council receive the committee of the whole report from its meeting held November 6 and approve the recommendations contained in the second item, PRC 2023-04, update to unopened road allowance and public water access locations. Same mover and seconder? Okay, got it. Any comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, if you could come back in. So now what we're dealing with is the council receiving the committee of the whole report from November 6 and approving recommendations contained within the following report, PRC 2023-04, T 2023-22, 2024 operation and capital budget, draft number 2. Mover and a seconder, please. That's okay. Okay. Councillor Potts and Councillor Baines, thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's also unanimous. Thank you. .2 The item is as follows, that staff report PRC 2023-05 be received for council's information, and that council provide final endorsement of a coordinator forestry position and approve the hiring of this position as per option A, which was selected during the 2023 budget. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Yes.
May I have those severed?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Do I have to-
And I'll move.
Okay, that's good. And yes,
The
so you'll move the receipt.
Yeah.
Okay, seconder for the receipt, Councillor Potts. All those in favor? So received. Okay, so the second item is approving the final endorsement for the coordinator forestry position. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Baines. Councillor Perry, thank you. And comments? Questions? Yes, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. So I was doing a walk on the trail behind me, and I noticed there are a lot of the trees now marked with pink marks. They're the ones to be torn down. Now we have a coordinator position up here. I'm just wondering who marked those trees and who made the decision to mark them. Sorry, Director Caller.
Go ahead.
That's basically my question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The pink markings are done by our staff based on an assessment, a visual assessment trail side. They're planned to be removed over the course of the winter. And they're deemed to be hazard trees that may cause public safety issues.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Ring.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. In the same vein, there are some that have been marked for well over a year that are with a yellow X. Same thing?
No, sorry. Thank you, Your Worship, through you. No, the yellow markings actually date back to the 2019 master plan, and they were part of the inventory and assessment that was done by the consultant at that time to identify trees that would be a future hazard. So they weren't marked in order to be taken down immediately. They were marked as a risk in the future. Most of those are based on the emerald ash borer.
Thank you. Follow up?
And just wondering why they would be that long, and if they were deemed 3 years ago or 4 years ago to be a possible hazard. Did we make a mistake 4 years ago, or like why would we take the time to mark them 4 years later, but they're still there? So I'm having a hard time with this. So you're going to obviously hear that.
Yeah, go ahead.
No concern. Thank you, Your Worship. No, they weren't deemed to be an immediate hazard at the time. They were deemed to be at risk of being a hazard in the future. And fortunately or unfortunately, tree lifespans and tree structures can take a varying amount of time to decompose. The emerald ash borer was actually identified well over a decade ago. And we're only seeing right now a lot of those trees that were deemed to be hazard by virtue of noticing that was either an infestation or their proximity to a location where there was an infestation. We're seeing some of those trees start to fail now. It's going to be an escalating problem as time goes forward. But identifying those trees really had to do with assessing the canopy at the time and doing an inventory of the town's canopy cover in 2019.
Yeah, go ahead.
And just one last question on that. So as you mentioned, the ones that were marked this year by staff, we're going to come down in the winter. Why is it such a pressing point to have to hire an arborist in this budget? We can't wait. We've already got a lot of the work done.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. So that's a big question. So when is the right time to start on a problem that we know is going to be escalating? In some ways of thinking, and as I mentioned in the previous council meeting when talking to the report, we're already struggling to keep up with the maintenance aspect, the hazard tree aspect. There are other aspects such as tree canopy maintenance, so lifting trees, limbing, doing things that would actually have these assets live a longer life in the urban environment. We're not doing those right now at all. There are also policy matters that would work alongside, say, town development or development of new homes, new subdivisions, which would help to enhance and achieve the canopy that council has indicated was desirable through the OP, for example. So there's a lot of work to be done. It's over and above sort of just identifying the trees that are marked and having them come down. That is a part of the work, but it is not the entirety of the work. And I would say as of right now, we're doing a percentage of the work that could be done and that was identified in the 2019 Urban Forest Management Plan.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin, through you to Manager Culver. Would this position of the coordinator, or could this position be used in new development applications prior to the clear cutting of the trees from the property to identify and mark any value or trees perceived to be valuable to the town moving forward?
Through your worship. So the short answer is yes. That would be a part of a future set of responsibilities. Right now, we're seeing that, and this is something that council's actually identified and has staff working on. That we're short of a suite of policies that would be required and be the impetus for that kind of work. So things like, and I'll just pick one, there are a number, but boundary trees. So as a development is clear cut, for example, sometimes that can have effect on the root systems and whatnot of the surrounding trees that were interior are now made more vulnerable. So what kind of policy work should we be doing to protect those buffer zones, to create the environment where those trees can thrive and survive? And that would have implications for this role in so much as the policy work, the post-clearing inspections, and et cetera. I also don't want to give the impression that nothing is happening right now. There are policies in place that protect trees, like butternuts is famous. You're not allowed to. And so that work is ongoing, but using external resources.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah. It's interesting to me. It's one of these issues that as a small rural community, is not a lot of thought given to it. But now that we have, growing communities, some of the trees are dying on our, tree streets and other streets. And we have development abutting new residential development abutting existing development where it is impacting on the trees. I'm seeing this more and more. It seems to me it's one of the issues that is unfolding as we grow. And becoming, aside from, we all hear, I'm sure, from the residents who want trees taken down because they're dead, but that was a big issue last term for sure. Okay, well, yes, Councillor Ring.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. Just one more comment. As you obviously I'm trying to find reasons to support this, and it's not that I'm going to start by saying I'm not saying it's not needed. I'm just wondering if it's needed in this year. That's my biggest concern. If we taxpayers, over the last 2 weeks, I've heard from probably more in these last 2 weeks than in the whole year we've been. And the biggest thing is this budget and the extra staffing that we're hiring. Do we really need it? And I'm going to say eventually we will. I just not convinced that we need it right now. I'm going to hear the safety side of it, but I don't think the day we hire somebody that the safety issue goes away. I mean, we got staff, as Director Culver says, they're not just sitting there doing nothing. They have people on staff that are licensed arborists. They're just not. That's not what we hired them for. So I mean, I think safety wise, are we going to be any more unsafe if we don't hire this person? Or I would just prefer to see it. It was obviously put off for the last 2 years. I'm just asking for one more year.
Can you address that as to the urgency, or CAO? Would you like to do that?
Yes, please. Thank you. That's a really good question. when you look at this position, what it is, and when I look at it, it's a multiplier of other people's efforts. If we have our own crew, for example, and we have 2 people with a chainsaw and a bucket truck, or preferably 4, but let's say there's 2 and they're out cutting trees, they're doing those trees that they can actually touch. What this position is intended to be is the one that will make sure that we've got the right policies in place so that developers who are making changes to the community and the 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 that are active are all doing the right things around the buffer trees, and that we've got those policies in place, that we're able to hire and manage the array of they're contractors that we currently have, the Davy trees of the world that are out doing work, that we've hired the people to do it and they've got their instructions, that there's someone making sure that those priorities are properly set between hazard trees and other types of trees. They're updating the policies around what people will be allowed to do with trees on private property and how that affects our overall tree canopy. And I think that's a really, really difficult but important decision for the community, because no one is ever going to be happy to have comments around what we can or can't do with trees on private property. But it's important for us to understand for the greenery within our municipality if in fact those types of decisions are required. So if this doesn't go forward this year, I mean, it's already in the budget. So council put the money aside last year. It's not part of the increase. It's been put aside. That said, you could replace it with something else. Absolutely. If you don't go forward with this year, it will put off that multiplier effect. So those policies will not proceed as quickly as I would hope they would. And we will need to spend a portion of the funding in any case to make sure that the absolute minimum pieces that we have to do get carried out. So this is about, do you want to turn the corner this year and start implementing that urban forest management plan with someone you can rely on to follow that direction of council? Or are you willing to put that aside for another priority? I think you won't notice a lot of change if you do go forward with this, as the impacts on the budget are not extensive. If we don't go forward, there'll be a little bit of suffering around, are we making the right decisions for the greenery in Collingwood? But
yes, Councillor Potts.
Thanks, Mayor Hamlin. Just a couple brief comments. So I'm a lot like Councillor Ring. I look at how important it is, but I also hear the concerns of the residents currently, and it's really just hiring more staff. So I can't support this just simply on the fact that we're trying to keep taxes low enough, and instead of adding more staff, it's if we do have a service that's going to remain through the season, through next year, removing trees or tree maintenance, I would always like to keep the work in-house, obviously, but as long as we are looking after the hazardous trees as far as removal and maintenance and trimming, and I certainly think and I feel that this coordinator position could be held off, and so for that I just won't be supporting a new hire. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask the CEO, could you clarify what you were saying about the impact on the budget? It's not in the budget increase. Sorry, did I hear that?
council approved this position a year ago. It's already been incorporated into the staff complement, and it's already been incorporated into the 2023 budget. There's no 2024 budget ask.
Okay, I think I get that. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All those in favor? And opposed? And that fails. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda. That T 2023-22, 2024 operational capital budget, draft number 2, that council pre-approve the proposed engineering position, and if the position is onboarded prior to the year end, that the expense be supported through the operating contingency fund. And I'm going to ask our CEO to speak to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I don't want to council and the public to know that we have done a lot of due diligence. In fact, I think all the due diligence that we need to do on this resource request. There's a lot of engineering work to be done in Collingwood. We've got our planning for services and growth, environmental assessments, water treatment, evolving transportation solutions, as we've heard from our public this evening, this afternoon. We want to grow wisely. We want to stay green, blue, and clean. And we do have a jewel of a town. And we need to protect what makes Collingwood Collingwood. And one of the council members said the last time we discussed this that we were too big to be small. However, I know the cost of the position is of concern to council. And it does contribute. The cost of the position is already in the base budget that was proposed at the 2% threshold cap that council set. So when we pulled it down from the 5% to the 2%, we ensured that the really, really key important things were within that 2% threshold cap if council had gone forward with that budget as it sat. I don't think that these figures will cause hardship in the community for the engineering resource. The impact is about $6 annually per household. I do think if we don't add this position, certainly the impacts in the community will become more visible than the $6. And I do believe council members will continue to see mounting concerns and call volumes around the issues that are coming forward in the community. If we look at whether a staff person is prudent and we always consider factors like, are they needed all year in the foreseeable future? Is there a benefit from someone being familiar with the town, or do we just need a certain level of expertise? So we've considered that does meet our prudency test. There's an economic impact if we don't have the engineering resources. Engineering is a bread and butter core responsibility. It's not something that we can put off or not do. The question is, how do we best manage these pressures? And in looking at that, adding a person is the lowest cost and the highest impact. If we don't add the internal resource, our alternative is to add consulting resources. I expect this would be 25 to 50% higher than just hiring the person straight up to do the work on an ongoing basis. When we hire someone externally, we need to do the procurement for that person. We have to bring them up to speed. We have to spend higher costs per hour than we do on our own internal staff. Without the team we need in place, we either can't grow because of our servicing, or when we do grow, it's without appropriate forethought and coordination, or without the oversight that the things council has decided on are implemented as they anticipated. This position is about managing a complex set of things that are happening and orchestrating the right projects with the right scopes in the right order in the right places that reflect best practices and research. We need an experienced manager of engineers and programs that can mentor and drive completions. So the projects that you're counting on getting out the door and the advice you're counting on receiving is there when you need it. Every municipality is focused on growth and housing. The province is driving that, and in many cases, the people who live here or want to live here are driving that. Qualified engineers are in short supply. It is a strategic advantage to go out now if we're looking for a good engineer ahead of all the others who will start to advertise as soon as their budgets are approved in December and January. And keeping the engineering staff that we already have is important. So we don't need them to be overworked or stressed about how they're going to be able to deliver the work. Finally, if you approve this position today, we will shortlist a recruitment firm and talk to them about the resources available in the market right now. It's so difficult to get these folks that we would like some professional help to search the best and the brightest out for us. We talk to them about the people who are available and how those, if not the people individually, then the groups of people, the types of expertise that are more available in the market, and match that with our gaps. And we'd proceed quickly to confirm the proposed recruitment with a public call and use of the recruitment firm, and keep council in the loop on the status of the decisions and recruitment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Oh, so let me read this. Oh, I think I already read it. Did I read this one? I don't think I got a mover and a seconder though. Okay, mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Baines, thank you. No one's going to second it? No? Okay. So I just want to say that without this position, we're going to have higher costs because of consulting fees. So I'm not sure where this is advancing our budget overall. And I think what I'll do is ask our deputy mayor to take over the chair because I am going to second this motion.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. Would you like to speak any more to it,
Yes,
or would you like to speak last? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I just, I totally appreciate not wanting to add one more person to the staff. And I totally appreciate the pressures that some members of our community are putting on us. I find there tends to be one more than others. But I think, as a core service that we need to develop our community, we need a senior engineer on the ground out there doing the work. And I see the results of not having that person every time I walk in our community, every time. Even yesterday, I was out thinking, oh my God, why hasn't an engineer from the town come here and picked up this problem in this community that's, finished, the people are moved in, and there's several major problems. And it's because we don't have this person. So I just, I implore you to think about whether we need to add this person or whether you want to spend the money on consulting services. We can't not have this person. So to me, that's the choice. And myself, I prefer to have an in-house person. I find the consultants, and I'll just be frank, we have so few consultants in town. They tend to work both sides of the street. So we get the engineers who are working for the developer and working for the town. And, it's just, anyway, I just think there's a lot to be said for having our own in-house person who's working with our staff. So that's my rant. And yes, Councillor Potts.
Thanks, Mayor Hammond. And
Pardon me.
thanks, Deputy Mayor Fryer. And I respect the mayor's comments. Again, going back, I do understand the need of the growth and development. Where I have a little bit of a harder time with this position is over the last couple of years, but I'm going to say within just the last several weeks, we've had two engineering staff that have been transitioned over to new public works positions. Actually, one was moved over to a supervisor's position that was at one time in the engineering department. And we've just recently have the latest one that is moving over into a new position that was created. So we did have the engineering staff on hand, whether it was at the senior level. But again, if those positions are being moved over, it shows to me I don't think we need to hire anything anymore in that department at this time. And I think we just need to get through the tough times. As any business, with going through the economical times that we're going through, I think we need to bear down and try to get through this together. And maybe when things look brighter on the other side, that we can certainly relook at this now. But again, I cannot support this new hire. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor, can I ask a question of Councillor Potts when you're ready?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to ask through you, Mr. Chair, is the staff that have been moved, are they how does that speak to the fact we need a senior engineering person to run this part of the department? I just didn't get it. Sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Potts.
Yes, thanks, Deputy Mayor. So again, maybe a better clarification is I'm not saying they may have been a senior level engineer, but I would say that I would think that things do add up. And if you have a couple positions that have transitioned to a different department, again, that is just, I look at that of, maybe lower level, or I shouldn't even say lower level, but, maybe entry-level engineers or our engineers that are on staff, looking at potentially adding to that complement. But I look at this, the price tag and the wages to this, and I'm speaking for our residents, I can't support it.
I'll look to, I'll maybe let the rest of the councillors, if they have anyone wants to speak, and Councillor Baines does, and then I will turn to the CAO. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to either the CAO or the treasurer. In regard to this motion, the expense supported through the operating contingency fund. First of all, is this not the same position that we had earmarked approximately 44,000 for the remainder of 23 and towards an annual salary of, I can't remember, 144 or something to that effect? First question. Second question, the operating contingency fund, is that council's operating contingency fund of approximately 135 as I recall? Thank you.
I think I will turn to the CAO. I know you may ask the treasurer to add, but and then if you want to cover what you were going to speak on as well in your response.
Thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to confirm that the positions that are empty in engineering are existing positions where the people were promoted into other jobs in public works. So the positions that are there don't add to the available engineering resources. If anything, they would make the it a more difficult situation within the engineering department, in that there will be a number of new people, as well as inadequate resources to deliver the work that's required to keep the town running. So that was the item I wanted to add, and I know that the treasurer has some thoughts on the expenditure potentially that was asked about from Councillor Baines.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, CAO Skinner, through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Baines. So on the contingency fund, you're correct. It was around 44,000. I think we're going to be a lot lower than that. That's when we were anticipating the hiring happening sometime in September timeframe. So now that we're nearing December here, it would be fairly small. I think we would be very lucky to get somebody signed at least for this year. So likely, maybe a $10,000 to $15,000 impact to 2023, I would suggest. And yes, that contingency fund is in the neighborhood of 130,000. I just wanted to add too that when we look at the work that this particular engineer would do, and from a financial perspective, what the CAO has spoken about with respect to consulting fees and the additional cost to hire the consultants to manage these projects, I think over the next 10 to 15 years, we have about $400 million worth of project work that needs to be done. That includes some of our asset management work, but is also a lot of new and bigger sort of development type projects as well. I think my concern is as we're in the depths of trying to work through our 2024 background study for the development charges, we're having these discussions about what those costs truly will be. And we're seeing such a huge increase in the cost of each of the projects just from a construction standpoint. And if we add consulting on top of that, there's a lot more expense that we would need to add. So there's a little bit of it causes problems in many areas. And although I can understand from the tax base, again, this was built into the base. I think one of the options from my stance that we could offer as maybe, a sort of offset is we have provided some portion of development charges to offset this position going forward, over the next number of years. We've only used about 25,000 because at this point, the DC background study is so new. We're not 100% sure what the total envelope will end up being. But I do think that there would be the opportunity to maybe increase that a wee bit if the concern was just that the impact to the taxpayers was too much. Again, the CEO mentioned it's about a $6 amount per year per taxpayer, but we could impact that slightly more if that was the intent of council as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll check and see if there's anyone else who would like. Oh, actually, Councillor Baines, I should come back to you. If are you covered? Okay. Councillor Ring.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Fryer. Maybe through to you to I guess Treasurer Quinlan, some of the comments you just made. I don't think the issue with me is the getting to the end of the year, because that wasn't my concern. My concern is then when we started 2024, that the money won't be coming out of any extras we have in reserve. It'll come off the base budget, right? So it's they get to the end of the year with, if we were higher today, wasn't the issue I had. Am I wrong there?
If I may, Deputy Mayor, respond. Thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you.
That's a good question, Councillor Ring. You're right. If the hiring didn't happen until 2023, the engineer has been included in the base budget, that 2% base budget. Mm-hmm. So what we were referring to when we said we're already supporting that position somewhat through development charges, as well as through our water and wastewater user rates, but that there could be the option of having less impact within that 2% that we had previously proposed by continuing to look at the development charge background study to see where that ending amount might end up in terms of covering the cost of the engineer position. It certainly wouldn't be 100%, but there would be some additional, we could look at some additional revenue if the background study allowed us.
Follow up?
Just to follow up, yeah. And now with the position and the comments about if we didn't hire, we're going to have the consultant fees, which would be more than paying this wage. Do we have to have consultants to make the same decisions that we would think that this engineer would be making? Or I mean, I'm having a hard time thinking we would spend that much money just in consultant just because we don't have that person in place. I guess through you to the CAO.
CAO Skinner.
Thank you. Through you. The engineering work that needs to be done is not only the decisions, it's the analysis that leads up to the decisions. So there were suggestions today around lowering of speed limits. There's questions around the scope and the delivery and the direction for our transportation master plan. There's the oversight of the huge projects like the water treatment plant, and then the EA and the delivery of the wastewater treatment plant. So if we don't have the in-house folks to deliver that work, then we need to hire someone to deliver that same amount of work. So we'd have to hire competent people with the appropriate engineering judgment and credentials to do the work. Just in context, because I know this is a really difficult decision for council, and it's a hard one, I think, for the public to get their mind around as well. Our budget for the last year was about 121 million, I believe, 30, almost close to 40 in taxes, plus the user fees and grants. It added up to quite a bit, and that was with assuming the water treatment plant drove forward. This position, as it sits right now, is about $85,000 from taxes, and possibly somewhat less. The treasurer mentioned today the potentially to take a bit more than we've currently projected out of development charges. So the impact on the overall budget and the impact on each individual taxpayer for this expertise is relatively low within the scope of all that council is directing. I think that if you were looking at all the things we do, from the arenas to the pool to the parks to treating water, this would not be the resource I would take out, which is why it has been our professional opinion that this one be in fact included not only in the base, like we didn't recommend any budget without this position, but that's why I'm here today asking you to potentially make an advanced decision that it's so important it should be, near the top of the budget considerations that you would go forward with, because ultimately the work is not optional. We're all accountable for these good decisions on clean water and safe roads, and we need to make sure we've got the team to do it. So I just wanted to sort of point out in the context of everything, the 85,000 to over the 120 plus million of work is a good investment for council, and I believe you'll get good results from it if you can find it in your votes today to support this piece. Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor? Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, so I will call the matter to a vote then. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, and opposed. So defeated, and I will turn back to Mayor Hamlin.
Thank you. The next matter is motion 12.2, and I'll turn it over to Councillor Baines to read in his motion.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. That council herein authorizes the release of $20,000 that was budgeted in 2023 for the Georgian Triangle Humane Society as requested during their deputation to the Committee of the Whole, on October 16th, 2023.
So that's the mover of this motion. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Houston, any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. The next motion is one that I'll ask Deputy Mayor Fryer to read in. It's his motion.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. And this is from Mr. Conway's visit to us last meeting in regards to 84 Year Ontario, the visioning and public consultation. That council refer the request regarding the future of 84 Year Ontario Street to the downtown visioning and master plan exercise, and further encourage the public that have ideas regarding the future of the town-owned property to participate in the upcoming public consultations on the future of the downtown.
Thank you. Would someone like to second this motion? Councillor Perry, any discussion or questions? Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I do have a question, and I'm not sure anyone here can answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. The long-term plan for this piece of property, is it to be a permanent park, or because it's town-owned? I'm looking to the future when hopefully real estate rebounds a little bit and it could be sold possibly. I'm not saying I want to do that. I just want to cover all bases.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that when this parcel was acquired, it was not decided that it would be acquired for any specific purpose, and that there would be an exercise at a future date to decide what should be done with this property. So as part of the downtown visioning exercise that'll start sometime in 24, this will be on part of that discussion. The group that came here the other night, or the gentleman who owns the property beside the park that would be mostly impacted, I would say, by a building going up there, is leading the discussion around, let's make this a park. And that's as far as it's gone, except for today. The motion is let's have his discussions forwarded to the downtown visioning and encourage our public to participate because it's still all up in the air. But I'll just now turn the motion information back to you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was going to add a little bit of history that comes into play when I'm saying that I want to have this put into the consultation part that we're doing right now. Is we also have that piece of property on the north side of First, Huron Street, which we've considered to be possibly a parkette down the road as well, joining the shoreline and the downtown core. So I look at this, and we're doing a downtown visioning, and we've got this piece of property and we've got that piece of property, and we need to have that all part of our consultation with the public on how we see it best going forward, with no, I guess, necessarily preconceived ideas from the idea that what's the best use for us to put it to, but that's my premise behind putting this forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll bring this to a vote. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. The next motion is one from Councillor Potts, and I'll turn it to you to read it in.
Thanks, Mayor Hamlin. The staff bring back a report to council with options to help identify existing parking spots between Hume Street and Hamilton Street on the west side of St. Marie Street, and future consideration of line painting of parking stalls, parking meters, and 2-hour parking limit.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for this? Councillor Perry, thank you. Any questions or discussions? Yes.
I just so after the motion, I've received some further communication and correspondence from residents in that area, and I think the main focus on this here is obviously the St. Marie Street on just to identify the parking stalls. And I felt that at the time it would be good to do a review, obviously with the I guess the parking and what's coming down in the future at Hume Street for the overspill onto the side streets. And I've had some residents from Robinson, Patterson, and even St. Paul and Market Street reach out. And so I think with doing this review, if I can make an amendment at whatever point, just to maybe do a fulsome review of the area of the side streets that kind of all fall within that realm, as well as there was a question about parking, why there is no parking signs on the east side of St. Marie from Ontario to Hume. So I think it's kind of and maybe with some help from the clerk, it's kind of a big ask to do the big study, but really the main important part right now is the identifying of the parking stalls on St. Marie and potentially some neighborhood input in the surrounding areas as well, if depending on what you'd like me to do. Thanks.
Okay, I did read the correspondence that came through, and I guess, as you say, there's residents on streets other than St. Marie who know that if St. Marie parking is compromised or eliminated in any fashion, it's going to end up on their streets. So, and I hear what you're saying, it should be a bigger look. I think maybe we should ask Director Slama if she has any comments about how this should be framed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Potts, we do have in the operational plan an item for staff to be looking at a no parking policy. And I do feel that some of this would be covered in that policy because we would be looking at how we are going to review any requests that would come in. So, you know, how far reaching would that be, and what are some of the considerations that would fall under that? And then, you know, if we can work towards completing that policy first, and then, you know, consider this area as one to review following the creation of that policy, that would be my recommendation.
Does that suit you, Councillor Potts, or how did you want to handle this?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. I can appreciate kind of how it's kind of not exploded, but it's gotten much larger than the initial ask. I think the most important part of this body of it is that the parking spots of the initial concern that's been kind of brought forward, you know, from my understanding quite a few times in the past and over the last several months to myself, that if we can get something going on the identification of the parking stalls to alleviate the pressures of the safety on St. Marie Street. And then, I mean, I have no issue at a future time of looking into potentially diving a little deeper into it. But I think the St. Marie Street issue is something that I would like to see taken care of a little bit sooner than later.
So if I understand, what you would like this motion to address right now is the painting of parking stalls on St. Marie Street, and to staff report on the options or feasibility of that.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so let me again ask Director Slama, with that clarification, does that still, in your view, need to follow the parking analysis that's going to be done?
Thank you, Your Worship. So we can look at the St. Marie Street and consider the identification of parking stalls by painting. So I would recommend that be something we bring back to council, which I believe is what Councillor Potts is also suggesting, because there will be a small, budgetary cost related to that for implementation and, continuation of that asset going forward in operating budget. So I think that would be good information for council members to have. And then we can also speak to the areas in town where we do the markings of the parking stalls, which I indicated before was just in the downtown core. So we could provide some more context around that.
And will you include the cost of any consultants, engineering consultants needed for this as well?
Yes, if there's any, we can, yes.
Great. Okay, so with that in mind, all those in favor? Do I need to explain? Everyone knows what we're voting about? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. So Councillor Doherty had brought a motion about pedestrian crossing signals. Did anyone wish to take this up in her absence, or shall we defer this? Yes, Councillor Houston.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to read it then?
That staff look into the notion of converting all traffic signals to include automatic walk signalization versus the on-demand feature, and that staff report back to council on the consistent operation of advanced green lights.
Yes, Councillor Ring. You second that? Okay. Any comments or questions? I have a question for the CAO. And will this also include the advanced timing of the walk signal in your, do we need to add that in?
Through you, I think that's what that means on the consistent operation of advanced green lights. I think that means advanced walk signals during green lights.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Councillor Ring.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hamlin. I think when I didn't add it to her motion on Councillor Doherty's motion last meeting, I did mention about the left turn advancement as well at intersections that have the lighting that's already there without having to add it. Is that what's included in the last sentence?
Yeah, I think maybe the COO is not quite correct.
Okay.
Yes, I think what you're saying is what I'm remembering as well, that the intention was around the actual advanced greens and that they're not always operating. Is that?
Exactly, especially on left turns.
On left turns. And the request is that staff look into whether they could consistently be
as
operating.
long as that's what it is, then I don't have any other concerns.
Okay. And so perhaps I'll just turn this to the deputy mayor, because I would like to make an amendment then to your motion that also that staff they're looking into this include looking at advanced timing of the walk signal. So in other words, that pedestrians would get a head start crossing the street before people madly try and turn right. Yeah, so that's my, so you have to.
Thank you. I'll just actually turn to the clerk and just check. Would that be considered a friendly amendment, or would you like us to go through it formally?
Since this through the deputy mayor, since this is Councillor Doherty's motion, I would suggest it probably should be an amendment at this point. It could have been captured in a report when it comes back, but if we want to provide clear direction on staff, I think we should do it as an amendment.
Okay, so we'll dot that I and cross that T. So we have a movement for an amendment from Mayor Hamlin, and a seconder would be Councillor Potts. Any discussion of the amendment that's being put forward to Councillor Baines?
Generally, in the whole motion is what you're both asking for, in the sense of Councillor Ring and her worship, an audit of the stoplights, basically themselves, to see if they are indeed timed correctly for advanced green. And I'm just wondering whether that's an outcome of this,
so
as far as the staff direction goes.
I'll first turn to Mayor Hamlin and see if you, with Councillor Baines' question, is that what you see happening with the amendment or?
Well, for the walk signals, there's two things, which is the advanced timing for pedestrians, and the other is the automatic walk. Because sometimes in some lights for pedestrians, it automatically, when the light turns green, the walk signal comes up. But at certain times of the day or weekend, it doesn't automatically, the walk signal doesn't come in, you have to push it. So it's very confusing for pedestrians, and mostly people jaywalk, and it's a bit confusing for the cars. That's what I understood. It's not an audit necessarily. It's just converting them all to do that. For the advanced green lights, I don't know the answer to that.
And so I'm just going to turn back to Councillor Baines. And do you feel like you've got a better understanding then?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll withdraw the word audit.
Okay, that's great. Any discussion further on the amendment? Councillor Ray? Just on the amendment right now. Yeah. Yeah. So on the amendment, is everybody comfortable? So I'll call.
I'm very sorry, Chair. I didn't know if I had anything to say because I've lost track. Thank you of the amendment that we're talking about.
And I had decided I better turn to the clerk if I'm asking if anybody's confused. It's really important she's not. So, Clerk Amos, are you comfortable with what Mayor Hamlin has put forward? And could you maybe review it for us?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Fryer. So there is two components to this motion. So basically the amendment would apply to the first component of the motion, where staff are going to investigate converting all traffic signals to include the automatic walk signalization. But this amendment specifically would be to add, as well as consideration for advanced timing of the walk signal.
CEO Skinner, are you want to make a couple of comments?
Yes, please. Through the chair, I think that the transportation director, Slama, had some comments earlier today about this being appropriate only in certain situations. And I wonder if it would be worth getting a couple of those comments now, as it may affect the amendment or the work that was expected.
Thank you. Through the chair to council members. So looking at if we were staff were directed to look at the timing of or the implementation of the pedestrian walk signals without a button being pushed, or look at the timing of the traffic signals throughout the town. So that is a much larger undertaking. And from an engineering perspective, some of the things that are considered in that are that automatic implementation of the pedestrian walk signal increases the time that the green light is operating. And so if we implement automatic pedestrian signals, as this is one example, at First and I want to say, is that, now I can't even remember, at Spruce, First and Spruce. So we would have the traffic on First Street stopped when potentially there's no vehicle or any pedestrian looking to cross. So that's why in some of these, arterial roads and well-traveled roads, we do implement pedestrian crossing that requires someone to push it, so that when someone's there, we know they get a longer walk signal, they have more time to cross the 5 lanes. And also we have the automatic timers in the lane, so that when there's a vehicle there, then it's triggered and the traffic signal changes. So if councils would like staff to put together a report that looks at this, I would suggest to you that it is going to take a bit of time for us to do this, because as mentioned, we are down at one person who's transitioned from engineering into public works. So we need to fill that position and look at this in our on the list of priorities in our operational plan. But I would like staff to bring forward some report that is comprehensive and explains to council and the public how the signals, both the traffic signals and the pedestrian signals work, and the possible effects it could have on the movement of traffic through town.
Maybe turn back to Mayor Hamlin with your amendment.
But I guess it will be council's decision to decide whether to give priority to the pedestrians as opposed to the cars. Because I just want to comment on this, that where I notice it is on here, Ontario Street at 2nd. And I think it's on the weekends when there's a lot of people on the streets crossing and the light never turns on its own, like the walk signal. And this is what I say, it's very confusing because there's a lot of tourists downtown. So I'm not usually walking around, First and Spruce, so I can't comment on that particular intersection. So, but anyway, I can hear, it's a question what I've heard here of moving traffic efficiently as opposed to getting people safely across the street who are pedestrians. So that'll be for us. But I still would like to proceed with my amendment if that's the question. Thank you.
So again, on the amendment, my one comment about the amendment is I think there's going to be locations, because you've already named one that probably should be considered. But I do appreciate what Director Slama is pointing out about some others, maybe not. So are we going to basically be able to see a report where we'll make the decisions about those more on a specific basis? Or are we, with this amendment, are we actually deciding now that we're going to do it?
Well, I think if I can just answer, I think the motion is that staff look into the notion of.
So if there's no other questions about the amendment, I would like to call the vote on the amendment then. All those in favor? And so we have the amended motion, which I believe I can turn back to Mayor Hamlin to put forward, right?
Sure, thank you. And so now we have the motion as amended. All those in favor? Oh, wait, Clerk Thomas.
Sorry, I know that traffic signalization is something that's ongoing, and the question about the timing and we have a lot of traffic signals in the town of Collingwood, is if, there might be a potential to have a phased in opportunity that some of these key ones can be looked at, because I do worry that, a report of this nature may take a long time to come back, the resources necessary.
Okay, so I think the clerk is raising whether we want another amendment to whether we want a priority report, if I can say it, on certain roads or intersections. So yes, so your Deputy Mayor, you have a comment?
I was going to be prepared to put forward that in consideration the amended motion, that the staff can report back to us of some phase-in recommendations as they progress with it, if they're seeing that there's a longer-term implication on the full report.
Okay, so that's, are you making a motion? Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Potts. Would anyone like to speak to this? No. Okay, all those in Director Slama.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, so a phased in the amendment is a phase. Staff can report back on the phasing of the review, or the phasing of the recommendations. I could have clarification on that.
Yes,
I
Deputy
believe
Mayor.
I'm looking at a phasing in of the review from the standpoint of it may take longer to look at the town in total. and that there may be some ones that are deemed to be something that could move fairly quickly.
Like, for example, if I can suggest where we know there's a lot of pedestrians crossing. Okay, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. The next item is about our interim tax bylaw. That bylaw number 2023-087, being a bylaw to provide for the 2024 interim tax levy, be enacted and passed this 20th day of November 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Fryer, Councillor Baines, thank you. Any questions or comments? No, thank you. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Are there any notices of motion today? Okay, county report. Deputy Mayor, did you wish to report?
Just briefly, I would like to say that on November 14th, Simcoe County Council at their Committee of the Whole meeting approved a 1.75% operating and a 2% asset management planning and capital spending increase to their tax levy. It will still have to come for the formal review and final vote on the 28th. A couple of the other staff reports dealt with such things as pilot programming for multi-residential collections and supportive housing in modular units. In regard to the latter, Simcoe County already has the Rose Street location in Barrie in place. They are considering additional structures with locations still to be determined through consultation with their municipal partners. I'm mentioning that because it's something that'll be on my radar, and I'll be dealing with county staff and our own staff in regards to that and those consultations. I mentioned earlier about our visit to the Institute South Georgian Bay seminar, and it was great to see Simcoe County staff in attendance. We had some opportunity to discuss the latest Simcoe County Housing Corporation report that is directed towards the same missing middle or workforce housing sector that Collingwood's been targeting. So I'm planning on following up with Simcoe County staff as well in regards to that, as I reported earlier, and coming back to the Affordable Housing Master Plan that coming to the county table. And then I did notice that Mayor Hamlin had put on the consent agenda the Transportation Master Plan documents, so I won't elaborate about that. And those are all the items I had from the latest.
Okay, thank you. So next is the consent agenda. And the motion is that council hear and receive the general consent agenda, and further that the information and opinions provided in the general consent agenda items are those of the author and are not verified or approved as being correct. 16.1, proclamation, November 25th is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women in the town of Collingwood, and the clock tower will be illuminated November 24 to 26, and there'll be a flag raising, as I mentioned earlier, this Friday at 11:30 a.m. 16.2 is the consultation on the County of Simcoe Master Transportation Plan. So could I have a motion? Do we need a motion for the consent items? Yeah, to accept them. Yeah. Okay. Deputy Mayor Fryer and Councillor Ring. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Would anyone like to pull anything? I'll just address very briefly the consultation on the county's master transportation plan. I just put it here for the information of council and our community. This plan addresses active transportation throughout the county, and also the links around our region that are on the county-owned roads. So it's worth a read. It addresses briefly our temporary bypass and the need to do further study on a lot of things that will affect our community. Yes, I see your card. Deputy Mayor Fryer.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I'll just add that it is a 30-day period that they still will be taking any feedback from the public or council members. So that's the other thing about making sure that it's something that you're familiar with, because there is still an opportunity over the next 30 days for feedback before it has final approval.
Yes, Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a brief question. Do you know which of these 6 presentations addresses the temporary bypass for the town?
You know what? I haven't been able to open it again because of my computer since we sat at the council. I was even trying to open it as we've been sitting here, but I just don't have the computer skills. I'm not skills. I don't have the computer that's working
Perhaps
properly.
the deputy mayor knows that.
Yeah,
I
go
have
ahead.
to get back to you on that one. Yes,
It's
1,000 pages or whatever it is. Yeah.
It's not too hard. I think all the appendices are different versions. So if you look at, I think Appendix 1, you'll get there pretty fast. Yeah. Yes, Councillor Perry.
Well, thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I'm actually having the same problem. I want to look through this thing, and I tried all day yesterday, and I've been trying, I'd say 10 times now, and I can't. It'll go through a few pages, but that's it. It just goes blank after a while. So I do, if somehow we can get that, and I don't sure if anyone else is having the same problem, but.
Thank you for sharing that.
Because this is really important to me,
Yeah.
and I can't get through it.
It's sort of off topic here, but I've been wondering if it's the fact it's always opening in Adobe. But anyway, yes, go ahead. Do you have an answer on this?
Provide some tech support, maybe.
Yeah.
I had to do it by downloading the file and then opening it on my computer rather than viewing it in the browser or in Adobe. That's what was doing it for me.
I tried to do that too, but on the desktop link, it still didn't work. But anyway, okay, so I can help you later, perhaps find that.
If I may,
Yeah.
I just opened it incognito. If you do that, you can look at it. So just pretend you're not who you are and you can get through it.
It depends on your computer. All right, next item is older deferred business. I have one thing. Is there anyone who has anything they would like to raise on this? No. Okay, my one thing is, oh no, mine's going to be under other business. Sorry. Okay, next to other business. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. So I was going to speak to the upcoming Roma conference, and specifically in regards to approval by council of delegation requests. Mayor Hamlin's going to be attending, and as you know, we did with the AMO, we formally approved a priority list that staff had reviewed and provided to us. So in order to make this motion, I do need consideration to waive motion because it is something that we'd have to have into Roma in the next day or two. So I guess the first request would be to waive motion.
Okay. Could there be a seconder for that? Councillor Potts? All those in favor? So waived.
And I have a short motion that says that council support the following Roma Conference Ministry delegation requests be submitted. First is water treatment plant expansion funding. Second is grain terminal project funding for public realm components. Third is the regional transportation planning and Highway 26 bypass. All three of those are AMO that had been finished. And the third one, of course, involves the town of Blue Mountains as well. So the fourth is regional approach to South Georgian Bay, and that's a new one. And what's going to be happening is Mayor Hamlin's going to be attending. And as I said, I wanted to put this motion on the table to provide her with or I guess first off, provide staff with a priority list that they can submit to the ministries for their consideration, and then hopefully get some confirmation back to Mayor Hamlin on which ministries she's going to be able to meet with on our behalf. So I am putting that motion on the table, and I would need a seconder.
Councillor Perry? Any discussion? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. My item that I wanted to raise is with respect to the financing of our share of the expansion of the water treatment plant. So mine is a question of our treasurer. When I would like to know when council will have an opportunity to think through the details of that expansion, assuming, of course, the bid's accepted and with all the variations that could happen with the bid acceptance. I think we need to have, in my view, some discussion around how exactly we're going to finance our share. And so I was wondering if our treasurer could address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we have brought forward a number of reports so far through in camera. So there are some discussions with reference to the external debt. I think what our plan is to have another in-camera session on the 27th of November. And we will address the different questions that you've put forward in terms of external and internal. There's some sensitivity analysis that I think is important as well to help council make some decisions with regards to that.
And particularly, I'm interested in whether we should be looking to our development community in some fashion. So there could be a third part. Okay, that's great. All right, just stay tuned for November 27th. Thank you. And I have another question of our CAO as to the discussion today that I know we can continue to have in our budget discussions around financing or funding our engineering services that we have to provide. I'm wondering if in our budget discussion at an appropriate time, we could get an estimate of what the consulting engineering fees are going to be for 24 and perhaps 25 if that's known. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. Yes, I was percolating since the votes today what we needed to do to make sure council had all the information it needs. When we do bring forward the next version of the budget, we'll look at the options that include hiring the resource versus what we would do if we didn't hire an explicit resource so that council can see the difference. I wasn't intending to bring forward, unless it was specifically intended, all the things that we hire engineering consultants for, but a quick look at the projects, mostly from the engineering side of the shop, you would see a good list where we've put funding against some of those major projects.
I know I happen to sign the checks that go to engineering consultants. And I think I went in the wrong field. But okay, thank you for that. All right, any other business? No. Okay. On to the confirmatory bylaw 18.1, the bylaw number 2023-088, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council held November 20, 2023, be enacted and passed this 20th day of November 2023. Could I have a mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Houston, Councillor Baines, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. So what I'm going to suggest is we reconvene at 5 o'clock for the committee of the whole. And because we're missing both, well, I guess I'll address this at the beginning, but just so you know, sneak preview, since we're missing both our chair and our vice chair, I'll be chairing the meeting and our vice chair will be our deputy mayor. Okay, so thank you. And moving an adjournment, we have Councillor Potts. All those in favor? Thank you, everyone. 5.